In today's video, we're going to be discussing some NHL trade rumors on 3 Canadian clubs, a focus on the Ottawa Senators, Calgary Flames, and Vancouver Canucks. We also have the latest speculation on some potential candidates for the vacant Penguins general manager role, and we're going to recap all of last night's action of the first night of the 2023 NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. All on coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a lot to cover here today. Before we do jump into the news though, I just want to remind everybody it is not too late to join the Top Shelf Hockey NHL Bracket Challenge League. I will put a link down below in the pinned comment. If you already have not joined your league or have not submitted your bracket, certainly feel free to do so. This is the league that's created just strictly for fun within our YouTube community here. I just want to have as many people that's interested to join, jump in. Put your predictions forth. Let's have a little fun. This is just for bragging rights to see who can best predict the outcome of the 2023 NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. So the link's down below in the pinned comment if you haven't already done so and you're interested in having some fun with some fellow subscribers, viewers, and of course myself as well. So let's get into recapping the first night of the NHL Stanley Cup playoffs. There'll be lots of great action. 4 games started last night. Game 1 of 4 series. We have 4 more going tonight. Of course, last night we had the Bruins and Panthers kick things off. We had the Boston Bruins defeat Florida 3-1. Pretty solid game overall. Boston was without Patrice Bergeron, but that was still, they did just fine, but they did okay. I mean, which is unusual. Bergeron doesn't, it takes a lot for him to miss an important playoff game. So, he had to be severely under the weather. Linus Ullmark was also considered a game-time decision. Did play and played it very well. And obviously the Bruins pick up the win at home ice. It was a, relatively... I wouldn't say it was an easy win, but it certainly wasn't, a game where Florida was really ever had a chance to get the victory here. Matthew Tkachuk scored the lone goal for the Panthers. Pasternak and DeBrusk answered for the Boston Bruins, and they pick up a 1-0 series lead. Next up, we had the Carolina Hurricanes do battle with the New York Islanders, where Carolina picked up a hard-fought 2-1 victory. 5-on-5, the game was relatively even. I wouldn't say there was a great deal of lopsidedness at all. He was fairly even that way. Both of Carolina's goals came on the power play. So for me, it was the special teams were the difference. The Islanders special teams really lost them the game in multiple ways. For one, they had nothing happening on the power play. So the power play failed them, which has been a struggle for them. The power play has not been playing well. I thought with Matthew Barzal coming back, he would give it some life, reinvigorate it. It didn't happen. And he said the Carolina goals were both power play goals, and on the PK, a couple of players in there just looked a little lost, in my opinion. Bad coverage, which led to a couple of goals there. So ultimately, that was the difference. I mean, Ilya Sorokin played well for the Isles. Antti Ranta had to start for the Canes. Both goalies were relatively solid. There wasn't much going on. Although the one goal the Islanders got from Ryan Pulock on Ranta was, it was a really weird goal. He went to shoot the puck. He kind of whiffed on it, almost kind of like heeled it. And it didn't have much power on it at all. It was going a little, probably different angle than Hinta was expecting. It went off his stick, and that's kind of a soft one, but certainly he responded to that. I was a little concerned for the Canes after that went in, thinking that maybe he's not going to have a good night, but the rest of the way he shut the door. So moving forward in this series, if the Islanders have any hope to win, they need Sorokin to continue playing the way he has been, and their special teams need to be a whole lot better. It's just that simple. Otherwise, the Canes are going to feast on them. We also had a couple of games going to overtime in the later part of the evening. We had the Minnesota Wild and the Dallas Stars go to double overtime, with Minnesota picking up a 3-2 victory. That game certainly had its fair share of nastiness. It had its fair share of lots of big hits, some injuries. Double overtime. Winner scored by Ryan Hartman. So obviously that's a big win for Minnesota. I think more people picked Dallas to win than Minnesota, but at the same time, I think a lot of teams were not wanting to play Minnesota in the playoffs. I mean, to me, they are built for playoff hockey. I just think it's a team you're going to go into battle with, and you're probably going to come out bruised on the other side. Matt Dumba laid out a massive hit on Joe Pavelski. Originally, it was ruled a major, and I think the refs only ruled it a major penalty just so they would have the ability to review the play. They did, and then it was reduced to a minor, and it was only given a minor. I think he only got a minor for roughing, actually. And Max Domi, who responded, throwing some fists afterwards, also got a penalty for roughing and misconduct. Pavelski, though, unfortunately, the way he went down, he did hit his head on the ice, so he looked really wobbly and woozy. Today, we've seen reports from head coach Peter Dufour saying that Pavelski is okay, but they're not sure if he's going to be able to play in Game 2 or not. I would suspect that probably not. I mean, him leaving the ice did not look good. I know a lot of people were calling for a suspension on Dumba or something further. But to be honest, after watching the hit numerous times, I really feel like it was a clean hit. I don't think it was late. I think it's a clean hit with an unfortunate outcome is what I see. I don't see head contact. It was a shoulder check. It's just an unfortunate situation in my opinion. But at the same time, I also see in a case of Ryan Suter delivering some evil cross checks to Kirill Kaprizov too. So it's a nasty game. That series is going to get nastier as it goes. And I certainly expect a big response from Dallas. And of course, the other game of the night, the Oilers and Kings went to overtime as well. The Oilers were dominating the early part of the game. It was getting quite late here on the East Coast. I did fall asleep and miss the ending of it, but ultimately the Kings came back and won, tied it up late and won it overtime, 4-3. Power play goal in overtime ultimately was the difference. I don't think after watching the replay, the call in overtime to give the Kings a power play, the penalty on Desharnais, I don't know, that looked kind of suspect to me. The Kings player was kind of flopping around there. Don't really like the call, but at the same time, it is what it is. Kings win. Oilers kind of blew that lead and give the Kings a 1-0 series lead. I know a lot of people picked the Oilers to win, including myself. It's one game. I think the Oilers need to clean up a few things and kind of go about things a little differently to close things out. But ultimately, they came out flying. They looked really good. They were dominant in a lot of ways. They just need to do it for a full 60 minutes. So I don't think anybody in Edmonton should hit the panic button here just yet. So obviously the other 4 series will go tonight. Obviously last night, the same as tonight, we had 2 in the East and 2 in the West play. So tonight we'll kick off Toronto and Tampa and New Jersey and the Rangers. Those should be really fun, exciting games. And of course out West, you've got the Avalanche doing battle with the Seattle Kraken and the Vegas Golden Knights kick off their series with the Winnipeg Jets. So obviously lots of great action. The first night was fun. Let's hope night 2 is as well. Now some speculation in Pittsburgh. We know that they're going to be looking for a new GM. Obviously, we've seen some changes come after the dismissal of Brian Burke and Ron Hextall. There is some speculation from NHL reporters that one name that they might look to talk to is former longtime Blackhawks general manager Stan Bowman. Now, of course, Stan Bowman was released from his job in Chicago after the whole Kyle Beach scenario unfolded with the Blackhawks organization. Certainly, that's, he's connected to that scandal. So I believe it's that the NHL would have to approve him to go back to work for anybody. Same thing with Joe Quenneville. Any of those people that were lost their jobs or were involved in that, they're basically, I believe they're kind of like suspended, or they will need approval to ever work in the league again. So they have to have a meeting with Gary Bettman, show what they've done in the interim, and they have to be comfortable that they're going to, say that we're never going to see anything like that happen again. So the connection there, though, is that Stan Bowman does have a long-standing working relationship with Mike Sullivan. The two know each other very well. Before working with the Penguins, Mike Sullivan did work in Chicago, so he knows Bowman from there. Also, even though the NHL didn't end up going to the last Olympic Games, Bowman was projected to be the GM and Sullivan was going to be the coach. So, of course, the players never ended up going, but again, they were going to work together there yet again. So it's the case of Sullivan and Bowman having a good relationship and, will work together before. That's the connection there. We'll see. I don't know if the Penguins will go there or not. Another name that I've seen surface as well by some reporters that they're saying could be in the mix as well as former Coyotes GM John Chayka. We know the Fenway Group is pretty progressive and, how they look at things, analytics and all that. And obviously that's right up Chayka's alley. I mean, Chayka's been away from the game for a few years now, so I'm sure he'd likely be interested in getting back in, but we'll see if there's I'm sure there's lots of other names too. I wouldn't completely rule out recently departed Flames GM Brad Treliving as well out of the Penguins spot. I mean, he's a well-respected guy around the league, so I have no doubt that any team that's looking might be interested in talking to him. Now, whether or not he wants to jump into another role right away, I have no idea, but obviously it's something that they might have interest. Now, on to some trade talk for today. A variety of teams here, all of them come across today are Canadian teams. We'll start in Vancouver. Reports from Thomas Drance The Athletic, looking at what the Canucks might do in the offseason. Certainly, we've known for some time that the Canucks, because they've said it numerous times early on with Rutherford and Alvin, that one of their big goals here is to gain some much-needed salary cap flexibility. So there's been talk for a long time of who's going to go. Like, they're likely going to want to unload a big ticket here to free up some much-needed salary cap space. And even though, yes, they've made some moves along the way here, they haven't really done anything too drastic as of yet, besides signing JT Miller, which came as a surprise. And at this point, it's not looking like he's going to be traded. There are some that still think that up until that no trade clause kicking in, that there's a chance that they'll explore it. I don't know. I mean, like I said, last year there was all the rumors connecting him to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's going through a new management change at this point. I don't think that they're not going to be in a position anytime soon to re-explore that. I honestly don't know. I think Miller likely stays in Vancouver. Thomas Drance also touches on the fact that at one point it was heavily believed that they really would seriously consider trading Thatcher Demko. But this was earlier in the year before the deadline when he was out injured. And of course, since he came back and played, he was remarkable again. It looked like his old self that was really a dominant goalie. So at this point, he feels like there's not likely any chance anymore that they're going to explore that they're probably set on him remaining to be the team's number one goaltender. So if you take him off the market, he feels like another likely candidate to get them some much needed flexibility and cap relief that could have value elsewhere would be Connor Garland. Now, we also don't know Brock Besser either. Besser's obviously making a good amount of money. The trade market for him, though, was pretty slim. They were not getting a whole lot of bites on the trade market when they talked about moving him before. I'm not sure if it was a case of just lack of interest or just lack of offers, but that were anything substantial to the point that they just didn't want to go down that road. So is it possible Besser gets yet another chance to come back to Vancouver and show he can be that player that they've been hoping he will be for a few years? I think it's likely. Not a guarantee. They may find a deal. He himself even said publicly recently that he really does not want to be traded and he wants to stay. I think he's quite happy with the changes they've seen at Vancouver, so we'll see. But right now, it looks like Garland might be the most likely player that could be dealt. He also has been mentioned in different reports around the Canucks that at this point, it doesn't look like they're going to be exploring any potential buyouts. You never know, but right now, things are not looking like that's going to happen. So we'll have to see. Of course, when it comes to Tanner Pearson and Tucker Pullman, it's quite possible that neither player will be available next year. I mean, there's no guarantees at this point that they're going to be healthy enough to play. I mean, Tanner Pearson is just trying to work on getting better quality of life and get that hand healed up. And of course, Tucker Pullman is doing a deal with his own thing in the form of a head injury. So certainly there's lots going on in Vancouver, but right now, as far as some trades that we might see, it looks like Connor Garland, according to Thomas Drance, is probably the most likely player that we could see moved out to free up some space. In Calgary, and I looked at some recent articles. Of course, you get the 32 Thoughts column just came out from Elliot Friedman here just in the last day. And then, of course, reports from Eric Francis as well, Sportsnet, just in the past few days ago. They both are pretty convinced on all the comments we've heard about the whole Flames scenario since Treliving announced, or it was announced that Treliving wasn't coming back. It sounds like that locker room was heavily divided. And it also sounds like there's a large group of players that do not want to play for Daryl Sutter. And at this point, we don't know 100% that Daryl Sutter is going to be returning as coach. But at this point, it seems more likely than not that he will be. I mean, at this point, the Flames need a new GM. That search has begun. We'll see when they find their man and make a decision. But for right now, Don Maloney is the interim GM and the president of the hockey operations, and he's going to be reviewing everything and making decisions. Sutter is under contract for 2 more years, and there's some that believe that the ownership doesn't want to pay him for 2 more years to not work for them. So obviously, that could be a big waste of money. But at the same time, they got to do what's best for the club. Now, Eric Francis almost seems to think that in a year or two time, it's quite likely we could see the Flames go down the road of a rebuild. There's a large group of players that have expiring contracts within the next year or so, and they seem to be a lot of the players that at this point at least that seem very much reluctant to saying that they're interested in re-signing or extending. So if a lot of those players like Backlund and Hanifin and Tanev, and Linus Lindholm, Zadorov, if a lot of those guys decide they don't really want to play for Sutter and they don't want to come back and they don't want to talk contract extension, that's a lot of talent that could leave. And then you got guys like Huberdeau and Kadri and Uyghur who just signed these massive long-term deals that might be having second thoughts or regrets here already But there's some that are concerned. I'm not sure. I can't say that it's happened as of yet, but I know based on what Francis and Friedman have both said, you have to think that there's a legit concern that guys like Kadri or Huberdeau could ask for a trade and say they want out. Now, I've seen some people suggesting that that might have happened. I don't think we've seen enough information from enough reliable sources to suggest that it has, but I gotta think that they're both having serious concerns at this point and want to see some significant changes and be comfortable staying on. They do both have a lot of say in their contracts. If they force the Flames to move them, with the trade protection they built into their contracts, that can make things very, very interesting. The Flames could really well be screwed on deals, and they may have a hard time. Like they pulled the rabbit out of a hat with Tree Living getting that deal when they had to trade Matthew Tkachuk for Huberdeau and Uyghur. The odds of them getting another deal like that again are pretty slim. So we'll see what happens in Calgary, but there's certainly a lot of legit concern that some guys like Huberdeau or Kadri could request a trade, and a lot of the pending UFAs are not going to want to stay. And if enough of these guys are unhappy, it could almost force their hand and push them down the road of a rebuild here in the not too distant future. We'll see. It's certainly a very interesting team to watch this offseason. Also in Ottawa, of course, we heard a lot of season-ending comments from GM Pierre Dorion, which Elliotte Friedman in his latest 232 Thoughts column has kind of commented on and expanded on as well. Talking about the goalie market. Of course, Dorion went on to say that he was disappointed with the team's save percentage as a whole, and that certainly is something that needs to get better, which he's absolutely right. In order for them to have a chance to be a playoff team and to do any damage, they need to be at the top half of the league, ideally top 10 in save percentage, and they were not. They had too many goalies this year. The young guys are just not prepared. Forsberg should be one of the two main goalies next year, but he's coming off a double knee injury. So I don't think it's fair to rely on him as a starter at this point. I think at the very least he needs to be in a 1A, 1B scenario or be a backup. And at this point, Matt Sogard does not seem to be ready, at least not yet, to be the main guy. So there's talk that maybe they could trade for a more experienced goaltender to kind of help come in and stabilize things. Same sort of concept they did getting Cam Talbot last year, except that backfired on him and it didn't work out. And this time they'll be trading a young goalie for an older, experienced goalie. They're helping with a different trade route. If they do make a deal, it's going to have to be something different going out the door. But Elliotte Friedman wonders if that guy could be John Gibson. Gibson, we know, has been with the Anaheim Ducks a long time. He has 4 years left on this deal. Over the course of that 4 years, he's owed $25 million. Cap hit, over $6 million. So it's a big ticket. Would be tough for Ottawa to swallow, given all the other money they've added to their cap situation here in the past year. But if the Anaheim Ducks are willing to retain some money and make it more reasonable, then maybe they might have a shot. But we know that Gibson has been reported, and Friedman reemphasizes this again, that he believes John Gibson would welcome a first start out of Anaheim. He's getting older, still has lots to give, but would love to have a better chance to win. It's not going to be possible in Anaheim for some time, and that he would welcome a fresh start. So maybe a John Gibson trade to a team like Ottawa, who's up and coming, trying to become contenders themselves, might be a good spot for him. I'm not entirely convinced he's the right option for them. The contract itself is problematic as much as I think the goalie could be a good fit. Ideally, a little bit less term would be better. The other thing is the Ducks are the worst in the league. They have the best odds of winning the Connor Bedard sweepstakes. If they win the Bedard sweepstakes and draft that generational player, I can see Pat Verbeek going about things a little bit differently and trying to accelerate that rebuild, and training your number one goaltender isn't exactly going to do that. But they do have Lucas Dostal in the system, who I think eventually should become the number one goalie and surpass Gibson, but I'm not sure if it's quite time just yet for that to happen. But either way, it's an interesting name to keep an eye on. We'll see if there becomes anything more to that between Gibson and the Senators over the course of the offseason. I'm not completely sold on the idea, but there could be other goalies out there that might be a better fit with better term, better money, and just overall be able to solidify the position short term, so that a guy like Sogard and Muriel can come in 1 or 2 years' time when they're a little bit more ready and kind of take it over. But we'll see what happens. Let me know your thoughts on everything discussed today down in the comments. Again, don't forget about the NHL Bracket Challenge. That's in the pinned comment down below as well. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the news and rumors of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.